Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another session of our podcast for our guide on mentoring. It's actually Making Connections, a handbook for effective formal mentoring programs in academia. If you have been following us, you know that we are now at chapter 17, and I'm very excited to be here today with the author of the first case study in chapter 17, Kathleen M. Kaplan. Kathleen is an associate professor in the career track of educational leadership at Washington State University, Tri-Cities, where she teaches, mentors, and co-mentors aspiring PK to 12 teachers, school leaders. Her research focuses on the development of effective relational co-mentoring practices for those educational leaders, for their formation and the creation of co-mentoring circles among current and formal educational leadership students. Kathleen has served as a teacher herself in both elementary and middle school and been a principal for over 25 years and completed her superintendent certification. And Kathleen is the past chair of the American Educational Research Association Mentorship and Mentoring Practice Special Interest Group. And in 2020 was selected as a member of Washington State University's President's Teaching Academy. So welcome, Kathleen. Hello, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Well, I am really looking forward to our conversation. I have found that these case studies have been providing really rich examples for our folks who are listening on how to deliver, how to plan, implement, and deliver quality mentoring programs. And I think uniquely, your case study is really built on one of the longer standing programs. 7 years, the program that you've been running for school leaders has been going on. So I'm really excited to hear from you. But if we can start with you sharing what has inspired the work that you're doing in mentoring.
Well, I guess first you sort of explained my context, Tamara, but I work with currently at Washington State University with aspiring school leaders, folks who are in either in an educational leadership master's program and or combined with trying to get their principal certification. And so I teach a course that brings the interns together. And that course really was inspired by what they were telling me. They were telling me, the interns were telling me that they needed a space, a safe space to talk about and process everything that they were doing in their principal internship. And it particularly came out of some concerns that they shared with me. The first concern was often they were given things to do by their mentor, their site-based principal, who was there serving as their site-based mentor to do, and they sometimes didn't know how to do them. And they felt like they really couldn't ask their site-based mentor for help. And so that set up this feeling of concern about now my principal and my intern mentor might not think I know how to do something, or maybe I'm not really destined to be a school leader. So that was one of the concerns. Another concern that they brought up was this idea of doing something that they've been assigned by their mentor, but maybe not doing it the way the mentor would want it done. And then bringing up disagreements between the mentor and the intern, and even actually sometimes conflict. And those kinds of concerns or conflict also kind of colored how the intern might be viewed in their current job, because all of these aspiring school leaders are veteran educators. They're either classroom teachers, or they're instructional coaches, or they're deans of students, or they're serving in some other educational specialist role in the school. And so that could kind of color maybe their evaluation in their other role, if, through disagreement or conflict. And then kind of the last piece of the concerns list is that the mentor, the principal mentor, would be the one who signs off, who would be recommending them as a future leader. And so those concerns just kept bubbling up in our internship seminar, people raising their hand and, what would you do about this? Or what would you do about that? And so out of that, I started designing this course and to include the co-mentoring circle process. And so over the last 7 years, I've, added pieces and developed pieces. And it's really, truly, Tamara, to make a safe, confidential space so aspiring school leaders can really talk about the work they're doing in their internship and process that work to help in their leadership development. So that's, what really inspired this program.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think so much of what you shared are the power dynamics that often take place in mentoring programs where people are being mentored by leaders within their organization and people who have a say in their performance, their advancement. And while those are often great growth opportunities, sometimes those power dynamics can emerge. And I think your case study provides a really good model of how to support those type of mentoring relationships with this idea of co-mentoring and mentoring circles. So let's talk about a little bit about what a co-mentoring circle is.
Okay, well, I get to meet with my principal interns once a month in what we call the internship seminar. It's part of their internship. We meet once a month on a Saturday, and during that regular course time seminar, I devote about 90 to 100 minutes of that time to be in the community, be in the co-mentoring circle together. So there really are 10 parts to that, the co-mentoring circle, and getting to build that community. And I just call those 10 components the formation pieces. And so if that's okay with you, I'd like to describe those 10 pieces now, if that works.
Yeah, that's great. And for folks who are reading the chapter, there's a great diagram of them. But yes, talk to us about some of the key ones, because I think this idea of a mentoring circle, a co-mentoring circle, and peer mentoring may be new for folks. So knowing what they have to keep in mind, I think, is crucial. So yes, please share some of those components.
So usually there's between 10 and 12. Sometimes we've had up to 15 interns in the course. And so as a part of the course, they participate in the co-mentoring circle. And we do a lot of work just talking about what good mentoring is besides these 10 things. But the main thing that we do to establish and form the co-mentoring circle is we start with group agreements. And we really talk about how we're going to be in relation, how we're going to treat one another. And so I just draw on some work from Jean Gibb that I've been using since I taught kindergarten all the way now to graduate school. These group agreements or group norms really focus on, first and foremost, mutual respect. And along with mutual respect, we also want to appreciate one another. And then the next group agreement is that we're really going to use attentive listening. I mean, really true attentive listening. And then we have a fourth part of our group agreements, which we call the right to pass. And that right to pass is a time when, if something is too difficult to speak about, or if something holds an emotional charge for you, or you just don't feel like talking about something, you don't. And we invoke the right to pass. So those are our four main group agreements that we hold with one another. And then combining with the group agreements, we add this idea of confidentiality. And in the educational worlds circles that I work in, a lot of people know each other. And so it's really, really important that we hold our confidence around what's heard or what's said in the circle. In fact, we use something that draws from the work of Parker J. Palmer in The Courage to Lead. We use this term double confidentiality, which is this idea that only the person who brings something up can ever bring it up again. So, Tamara, if you and I were having a conversation in the co-mentoring circle, and I was telling you about this issue that happened with one of the staff members, you wouldn't, if I saw you later the next week in the grocery store, you wouldn't come up to me and say, "Hey, Kathleen, how did that thing go with that staff member?" That would be an absolute no-no. You don't bring it up. What's said in the circle stays in the circle. And so group agreements and confidentiality are really important, but so is this idea of reflection. And so I take time to teach reflective practice, and we use reflective practice each and every circle. We do it both orally and in writing, and the students write their reflections and I respond back to them in writing. So along with those first three things, we combine really taking some time to investigate our own communication styles and skills, and thinking about, areas for growth in our own communication style, and also how we like to get and give feedback. Do you like to get feedback straight between the eyes, or do you like it a little softer? We talk about communication, particularly around giving and receiving feedback, because what we do in the circles, we talk about concerns and we talk about issues. And so giving that advice or giving that mentorship to someone needs to be in a way that doesn't harm them, that they can hear what you're saying in a clear way that helps them. So those are the pieces that kind of go into this next part I want to talk about, which is trust. So without those pieces, we really can't develop into a trustworthy group. And so as those pieces are held with confidence, and the group agreements are holding, and every time we come into the circle tomorrow, we check in. How are these things going? And each time we end the circle, we check in. How are they going? So we don't make any assumptions that people are going to remember the group agreements. We start each circle by reviewing those. And so to build the trust, when those things hold, then the trust really starts to develop. And then I use three other kind of specialized activities to deepen trust. And the first one we call hopes and concerns. And in the hopes and concerns activity, I've done it both online and in face-to-face settings. What we do is we just write on a Post-it or on the Jamboard Post-it in the virtual world, we write a hope. And on another one, we write concerns. And we list those either on the board or on the Jamboard. And then we take a gallery walk and we kind of look at those and think about them. And then we start moving them around, those Post-its around, and seeing, where they might be similar, where they might be outliers. And even though those hopes and concerns are written anonymously, often the interns will say, "I wrote that one," and then somebody else will say, "I wrote that one," and they'll start identifying that they have the same concerns, they have the same hopes for their internship. And when they do that, it really helps deepen the camaraderie. I mean, they really start to see that they're not alone, that there's other people that have the same feelings. And then another activity that I use to help, and that camaraderie deepens the trust. And then another activity I use is called the professional timeline. And it's just a written timeline. You can make it however you want of your professional educational background. And some people start by sharing when they started, teaching their siblings or their friends in plain school, preschool days. Others start, from a point in college or even post-college that brought them to education. And when we look at those written, and we share those written timelines with each other, we find out more about each other, and we find out about our experiences and our education. And so what that timeline activity does is it helps everybody see the connections, and they see the expertise that each person holds. So if they, for example, they have a need to know more about, say, a special education practice, and they know one of their co-mentoring circle participants has 20 years as a special education teacher, they have a ready-made expert to call on. And that expertise is just also appreciated so much, because you make these connections, and the connections help deepen the trust that someone you know and can reach out to. And then the third activity is called the self-portrait. And in the self-portrait activity, we write an autoethnography about any event that intern really wants to share, but usually it's on the connection of home, school, and community, and how homeschool and community come together, because that's a really important aspect of a school leader's role, is working not only with the students and their families, but the staff, and then the community stakeholders. So I have them write a story about a time when those things came together. And those autoethnographies, Tamara, they are really sometimes very personal. They show a great deal of vulnerability. The students go really deep on some of those stories. And though when they share those stories with each other within this trusting co-mentoring circle, it just deepens their knowledge of each other. They get to know each other in a deeper way. They have an appreciation for what other people have gone through or have dealt with, and that helps them. Sometimes I think it helps them see even their own experience in a new way. So with the deepening of trust through those activities, there's a final piece, and that final piece is really focused on the idea of assessment. And this is something that I've learned by going to conferences and reading other scholars' work on mentorship, and thinking, and each year of over those 7 years, adding components and looking for ways to make the process better. And so self-assessment and group assessment and programmatic assessment have all been added over these 7 years. We always end each circle just self-assessing orally how things went. How did our work go? Are we holding our agreements? Are we doing okay in our work together? Is there anything we need to talk about? Because as the facilitator, if anything comes up, then it's my job to take that on and to bring that up to the whole group. And then we also do an end of the semester assessment. And then as they exit the program, I've been having the interns give an exit interview about how the co-mentoring circle has affected their internship. So those 10 components go into what I call the formation of the circle. And after then it takes, each circle's a little different, Tamara. Sometimes it takes 3, sometimes 3.5 to get sessions to get there. But once we get there, then what happens is that 100-minute time becomes the time to discuss what the interns want to talk about. So they make the agenda. They send me things that they want to talk about. And the agenda items could be, like something to do with evaluation, like how to do a walkthrough, or the evaluation could be, or the discussion could be about not only evaluation, but it could be about, say, how to handle grief and loss. And during the pandemic, we had so many changes that were happening that that leaders needed to respond to. So the students themselves set the agenda, and they send me items, and then we put together an agenda and we prioritize it, and we just go at it. So that's kind of the co-mentoring circle in a nutshell.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I don't want to, I'm going to want to talk about assessment, but I also want to kind of hone in, because this is something that you have you didn't just throw this together, right? This is something that's come from a lot of work and research. And one of the things that you talk about in your case study is relational cultural theory, and how that and its tenets um, fit into this co-mentoring circle. And so can you share a little bit about what that is and how that relates to those 10 components that you've just shared?
Right. Well, there are three main components in relational cultural theory. The first one is interdependent self in relation. It's a mouthful, but that component is really about how we see our world. Do we see our world as, we're just one person, or do we see ourselves connected to everyone in our world? And so that's a perspective, a mentoring perspective, that we see each other as interconnected in everything that we do. And we're not just, in a standalone world. The second tenet is really about growth fostering interactions. And it's really this idea of being able to, everything we do, we take a look at it from a perspective of how can we grow into that. It is not, we want to be able to bring our full self to it. We don't want to have to hide bits and pieces of who we are. We want to be able to be authentic and real. And we want those interactions to be authentic so that we don't have to hide who we are when we're talking to each other in the co-mentoring circle. So both of those pieces is we see ourselves as very connected, which is tenet one. And then everything that we do in the circle, we're looking for how we can be authentic and really evaluate the choices we're making, the perspectives we're taking, and be open to the perspectives of what it's like to tell someone else what you're feeling, and to be really deeply heard. Sometimes I think our interactions aren't at that level, Tamara. They aren't at this level of you can really be real. You're always kind of behind the mask. You're holding something back. And so that's the piece that I think is so important in this tenet number 2. And of course, tenet number 3 is systemic power. And you started off our conversation today talking about power dynamics. And, there definitely are power dynamics within any mentoring relationship. But I think what's really important about this tenet is to bring that out in the open and to talk about it. And so through our group agreements, we talk about, yes, I am the professor in this internship seminar, but at this time, I'm going to be the facilitator of our circle. And I'm not here in judgment. I'm not here to give you a grade on what we're discussing today. I'm here as a person holding the space to let you say what you need to say, so that you can hear it, maybe in a new way, and learn from it. So definitely those 3 tenets are very important to me in terms of really thinking about how I designed the program to set up a space where we can have interdependent self in relation. We can be real with one another, where we can have growth fostering interactions, and where we discuss the power that's inherent in any relationship, and of course in a mentoring relationship. So that's one way that I brought that in and sort of stand on the shoulders of all that work and think about it in terms of those components, the formation components, the group agreements, the idea of taking time to reflect, because reflection is really critical to relational cultural theory, and also the idea of the confidentiality, because without knowing that confidentiality is going to be held, you might not really be able to be your true self.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. Thanks so much for sharing that. It's so thoughtful. And one of the things that I shared at the top of the session is that this program has been underway for 7 years. You have had a multitude of assessment opportunities, and you have mentioned that over the years you have continued to use that to refine the program. And I think you emphasized that in your case study. And I'm wondering, what else have you learned? What have been some of the outcomes, and what have you learned from this program?
The students love it. And I guess that what really, I mean, overwhelmingly positive response. And I really think that the program, that the co-mentoring circle process has, you know, that there are some circles that are still meeting. I mean, you know, over 7 years, there are folks that are still meeting together. They're getting together, maybe not every month, but, you know, occasionally. Or there are some people that have been through the process who are still meeting regularly with several people from within their circle. So these relationships formed in the circle are meaningful and life-giving, sustaining. People want to keep them going. So what I've learned is that they work and that people want more of them. And of course, they would like to have it be the whole seminar be in the co-mentoring circle, but then, you know, I have to teach a few things that are required by the state, you know, in that coursework. But you know, what I've learned is that you have to be really thoughtful, because if you just jump into the circle without affirming the group agreements and affirming confidentiality, or if you don't if something does come up and you don't address it and take care of it and bring it to the circle and talk it out, then the circle, you know, it's not good. It's not going to be a positive, life-giving place. Students tell me that the time goes too fast. They want more time. Students say that it's, you know, that they feel like they feel uplifted when they leave. They feel lighter. They feel a sense of being able to get what they need without having to worry about what someone thinks about them. They can be genuine. I also want to say, Tamara, that it's been a you know, kind of a recruitment tool, because what's happening now after 7 years, some of those students who I had the first few years are now in principal roles. And so when they see a future potential school leader in their ranks, as in their staff, they are saying, why don't you give Kathleen a call? And you know, and it's you know, and they speak very highly or very positively about their experience. And so it's been a recruitment tool for current students, because I have several current students who I worked with their principal. That's the one who said, come on, you know, think about becoming a principal. And so
that's fantastic.
I don't know. Did I answer that the way you?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think for anyone who might be in higher ed or an organization and thinking about implementing a co-mentoring circle, what I think is really powerful is the way that you have built this program into your course. There's no budget, there's no recruiting, and there's no matching, which are probably the three largest barriers that folks who are trying to get a program off the ground have. And so I think this is just such a brilliant example of how you can create impactful mentoring programs without it costing, taking an additional amount of time and resources and money away from what you're trying to do.
Exactly. I mean, that for me, that was the challenge in writing the chapter, is that the chapter kept asking, well, you know, about that. And I kept saying, no, I wasn't able to get funding for this. So I put it within a required course. And I just aligned the pieces that I needed to teach to allow the time to happen, so that we could have the co-mentoring circle within within that required course. And like you said, there is no matching, because if you're an intern, you're in the co-mentoring circle. And you know what, Tamara, no one that's come through the formation process has ever said, I don't want to participate. They really, I mean, I've never had it yet. And so knock on wood, but I haven't had anyone say that they didn't want to participate yet. And there are times when people take the right to pass. We have had conversations. We had a conversation during about grief and loss, a student's parent died, and how that, how to handle that from a leadership perspective at the school level. How are you going to handle that with the teacher who are teachers in this case, because it was in middle school, of that student, and how you're going to work with your staff, the counseling, the leadership team, how to handle that. There may be someone in the co-mentoring circle who's just suffered a loss of maybe in their family. And so they may not participate at that level that, they might otherwise. But what they do is they just say to me, either privately ahead of the circle, and most of the time it's privately ahead because we have that kind of relationship, is just that this is going to be tough for me, Kathleen. So you'll see that I'm going to sit back a bit. I'm going to take the right to pass.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. And I appreciate that. And so I want to ask you, as we wrap up our conversation, and I know that there are people listening who are thinking, I've got to build this co-mentoring circle into my program, into my organization, because there's just such value of creating that safe space, building community, and creating these relationships. So as you are thinking about the folks who are listening and potentially, also reading the case study, what do you think is a must-have when putting together the co-mentoring circle? What's a must-have?
You must be intentional, and you cannot make assumptions. So for me, Tamara, the group agreements are foundational. If we don't know how we're going to treat one another and how we're going to be in relationship, it just can't work. But that's my philosophy of education and in life, pretty much. And like I said, I've used these group agreements to teaching a kindergarten class when I was a kindergarten teacher, all the way to using it in the co-mentoring circle with graduate students. These group agreements are so important. And when I say don't make assumptions, we don't just do it on the first day of school. We do it every time we gather. We review them. We talk about centering ourselves and leaning into them. And if we have, and I need to see the heads shaking, thumbs up in affirmative that the group agreements are holding. And if they aren't, we need to talk about it. So it's that idea of not assuming that everyone knows how to be nice.
Yeah, that's true. And I know I am a huge believer in group agreements, community agreements, and laying that foundation. And they don't have to be static, right? And they often aren't. They are often continuous works in progress. So I think that's phenomenal. And about being intentional is to that safety and the kind of relationships that are being formed is really key. What is it?
Oh, I was going to say, and confidentiality is sort of tacked on to those group agreements. So, to me, those are the foundational pieces, having the group agreements and assuring that confidentiality is being held. Because if we don't have that, we can't have trust. And without the trust, we can't have the mentoring relationships develop.
Yeah. So what's a nice to have? Maybe I can't have everything, but if I can, what would be a nice to have?
A nice to have. I was thinking food. My husband Don makes really good banana nut bread, and those are some. They always come hungry. Or if we're meeting on a Saturday morning, they need their coffee, and to nice to have is to do those group activities that deepen the relationships. If I'm being more serious tomorrow, without each one of those activities, I didn't do all three of them all the time. They've been developing. The timeline came second, and then I was always doing the portrait, but then I added the hopes and dreams, and those abilities, and I'm dreaming up more every year. More activities. There are other smaller activities. I just highlighted those in the chapter because we had limited word space, but those activities to deepen the trust as you're forming the circle, and to continue what I call celebration or appreciation of the work we do. So making sure that you're taking the time to celebrate. As the facilitator of the co-mentoring circle, I see it as one of my jobs to make sure that we celebrate the work.
No, that's great. And you'd be surprised how many folks have responded to the nice to have with food. It by far has been the most common answer. And I think to your point, when we break bread, when we come together to share food with people, that there is something about that deepens those relationships that you have said. So while lots of folks have said it, I think it is one of those activities that does deepen the relationships between people. So lastly, what can we live without? What is something we don't need to worry about anymore? We don't need to think about. We can live without if we're building these kind of co-mentoring programs.
I thought long and hard on that one. And, for me, you've kind of already brought it up, is that I think we need to have, we need to go outside of our program or department or our college or our school, when the expertise is right there. All of those principal interns have years of experience. One of the activities I do is we add up how many years of experience we have in the room. And sometimes it's, several hundred years of experience. And when you put my 46 in there, it goes up even higher. So for me, it's we don't have to go hire a person to do this. We are co-mentoring each other. The expertise that we bring to the classroom, to this co-mentoring circle, is enough. We have it within ourselves, and then the other thing you've already brought up, which was we don't have to have a special some time to do it. This time I took out of something else when I took a hard look at that time and what I had to do and what I could do. And there it was, the time presented itself.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Well, Kathleen, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I know that our conversation today is inspiring people to go into your case study, dig in, and think about how they can replicate this in their own environments. I think that something I shared earlier today with someone that I believe that you said is that we all come with our own unique set of experiences and expertise, and sometimes it's just a matter of tapping into what is already there to really build something greater. So thank you for modeling that for the rest of us, and thank you for the incredible work that you have done at Washington State. I am more than excited for folks to read your work, so thank you so much.
Thank you for being here today and for conducting the interview. I appreciate you, and I look forward to learning more about your work.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll have to have another book.
There you go.
All right, terrific. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you in our next podcast. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.